The history of Western art is a succession of spatial ontologies. We see this progression starting in the Renaissance, where artists organized the world through a rigid Euclidean perspective to map out three-dimensional space onto flat surfaces. Here is Pablo Picasso beside a work that fractured Euclidean space. Cubism dismantled the vanishing point, breaking volume into planes to present multiple perspectives simultaneously. Later movements pushed this further. In this photograph of Jackson Pollock, we see the mechanics of abstract expressionism. The canvas becomes a map of subjective emotion and chaotic field forces, stripped of any harmonic ordering principle. Modern visionary art attempts to bridge this gap by illustrating spiritual or mystical realms, but there is a severe structural limitation. Depicting the symbols of higher dimensions fails to physically restructure the observer's cognitive state. For art to actively reorganize human perception, it must move past subjective representation and become a deliberate structural coherence technology. This requirement introduces Holo Qubism, an art science meta-paradigm formalized by Philip Lillian. Instead of placing objects into a framed void, Holo Qubism treats space itself as the primary artistic medium. Under this model, the artwork ceases to be a static object to be looked at. It acts as a transductive interface. In this 3D cross-section, the canvas acts as a permeable membrane. It receives higher dimensional principles and translates those oscillations into psychocognitive reorganization on the other side. The resulting structured lattice maps directly onto the human observer, driving biological and mental transformation. Holo Qubism functions as active ontological architecture, engineering the substrate of perception itself. This diagram illustrates the four nested, overlapping spatial domains that make up the Holo-Qubistic ontology. At the base is material space. This is the domain of entropy and metric tensors, comprising the physical room, the pigment, and the raw canvas. Intersecting this is subjective space, the low-entropy cognitive and affective field of the human perceiver. Above this lies real space, or coherence space. This is the causal domain, structured by negentropic longitudinal scalar waves. Finally, at the top is supersymmetry complexity space. This hyperdimensional fractal scaffold houses the exact blueprints and harmonic codes for matter and life. True artistic creation in this framework requires pulling the structural logic from that uppermost fractal blueprint all the way down into the material canvas. Here we see the transduction path, a sequential cascade of harmonic waves descending from supersymmetry space, traveling downward until they hit the physical art surface. In classical electronics, a standard resistor impedes the flow of energy, dissipating it as heat and strictly increasing entropy. The art surface relies on the negative resistor effect. It acts as a specialized valve that liberates syntropic order. It conserves the symmetry of the higher spatial dimensions, allowing complex fractal waves to pass through completely intact. Because the structure is perfectly preserved, these ordering forces flow directly into the viewer's subjective space at zero entropic cost. This direct injection of structural order aligns the viewer's subjective field with the underlying principles of the work, often manifesting as sudden analytical insight or a felt sensation of internal harmony. To engineer a canvas capable of this transduction, the artist discards symbolic representation. They rely instead on mechanical tools known as field operators. This animation demonstrates dipole harmonics. These are phase-locked, paired resonant fields expressing dual vibratory modes, one active, one receptive. The artist physically embeds these harmonics into the artwork using opposing geometric curvatures and dual color fields, establishing a precise state of symmetry with tension. This introduces chromoalchemy. Instead of using the standard Newtonian color spectrum to depict light, chromoalchemy treats color as a holographic, frequency-based coherence operator. In this system, manipulating color saturation does not create the illusion of light hitting physical objects. It expresses the exact field pressure and coherence density of the space. By removing narrative imagery and relying entirely on physical tension and chromatic density, these operators speak directly to the viewer's pre-symbolic neurology. We can observe these operators functioning together inside specific hyperclassical templates, such as the phi spiral harmonic field. In this diagram, a mathematically precise golden ratio spiral defines the spatial arc modulations. This exact geometry encodes continuous principal motion directly onto the surface. The artist then overlays chiral color distributions, pairing warm and cool dipoles along these resonance axes, using saturation to map the density of the coherence field. All of this rotational motion anchors at a central nodal point, which stabilizes the entire visual and energetic field of the artwork. Tracing this specific field structure entrains the observer's attention, shifting cognitive processing away from linear thought and into the recursive logic of the spiral. Holo Qubism treats the human perceiver as a highly sensitive coherence torsion field, a resonance structure capable of responding to precise scalar gradients. This equation, the scalar mirror law, dictates the exact requirements for an artwork to activate the viewer's energeometry. Variable A represents the artwork's scalar harmonics. Variable V represents the viewer's cognitive geometry. The delta function denotes when the canvas phase locks with the mind. Until that exact resonant phase lock is achieved, the holo cubistic artwork remains entirely inert. These technical developments lead to the transition into post-art. Post-art focuses exclusively on the structural transduction of universal principle, prioritizing the integrity of the transmission over aesthetic or narrative content. As the canvas dissolves into geometric light, we witness the endpoint of the physical artifact. The object is merely a temporary portal for resonance structuring. In this framework, the artist acts as a scalar architect, a transparent steward who constructs the invisible fields necessary for principal transmission. The true surface of the artwork resides within the viewer's inner field, where art serves as a foundational tool for structural reorganization.